we were just talking about what groups can do to help support you. My next question is, what can like the grocery stores and or restaurants and catering places do to help you, or if they can help you?
Mm-hmm. So we're a part of Feed Ontario, which is a provincial association, and then they're a member of Food Banks Canada, the National Food Bank Association, and they have national partnerships with Walmart and Loblaw, and so we are assigned the Walmarts and Loblaw's stores that are here in Mississauga, and we pick up food from them. So they are supposed to take the food that they can't sell that's still good, freeze it, put it aside in the back of the store for us to pick it up. It's not a great source of food for us here in Mississauga because the stores are very busy, their back rooms are very small, it's challenging for them to do that storage for us, and they've come up with lots of ways to sell some of that food now, whether it's the Flash Food app or the pink stickers or whatever it is.
Or taking off leaves of lettuce to make it look fresher.
Sure, there's not as much food that gets donated at the grocery store level. And then we're also partnered for those campaigns that they do when they ask people at the till. We get the portion that comes from Mississauga. Same for Fight Hunger, Spark Change, which is a Walmart campaign.
Does that make up for the lack of food you're getting from them?
No,
not really.
No, we have not. The food donations at grocery stores works better in some regions in the country than others for some reason. Okay. And the GTA, with their tight margins, their small footprints, it's a lot tougher. We're trying to learn from our partners in Quebec and in BC, where they've been able to rescue a lot more food. But I think part of it is we don't think about food in a healthy way as a society. Like, we expect, if you go to Metro at midnight, because some of them are open 24 hours, a perfect pile in a pyramid of apples. Mm-hmm. If you go to a grocery store in Europe at midnight, it's empty.
Yes.
And so we have this expectation to have abundance at all times, which leads to waste. Mm-hmm. If we thought of food as something that we get every day, that we cycle through, that's not expected to look perfect all the time, so it's almost our attitude about it, yes, leads to this food waste. So Loblaw and Walmart and Metro and those ones, we do have partnerships with them, but it's perhaps not as big of a source as people might think. Restaurants are tough because the food's cooked. We do groceries at food banks, and once things are out of a package where someone can package it, it creates increased risk. So we try to rescue stuff the best we can, but like if it's a platter of sandwiches, we just can't put it to use because someone else's hands have already been in there, and we wouldn't want that at home either.
And the same with catering. Then.
Same with catering,
which is a shame because that is both of them have a huge high waste.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, with catering, I think it'd be much more difficult because those are made to order.
And then there's temperature issues and all of that. The safe food handling of it.
Exactly.
You know, so people say all the time, they're like, well, I bring my milk home from the grocery store in the back of my car. Why does the food bank need a refrigerated truck? Well, because that's your milk for you and your family. Yeah. This is an organization serving 56,000 strangers.
And you've got
we have to have a higher standard, a higher standard to keep everybody safe.
So these numbers, where are you getting these numbers? How are you tracking them? Like, where's this data coming from?
Well, so two interesting things. So we actually run an industry standard inventory system in our warehouse. So every pound of food, we do everything in weight, gets weighed on the way in, it gets tracked by category so that our agencies can order from us and we know what we have in stock. So food banks are operating industry level kind of SKU barcoding systems to be able to keep track of everything. So you can do your first in, first out and all of that.
And that costs money.
And that costs money, yeah. So my chief operating officer who joined us last year comes from the food industry. She worked for Loblaw, she worked for some food business startups, and so she's brought that expertise to what we do there. And then on the client side, the food bank visitors, we use an online database that's connected to the food banks across the province and the country to be able to have access. So it's like, you know, you used to go to Blockbuster with your card, same kind of thing. People have a number at the food bank and it would log their visit in the system. So in real time, we have both the demographic information that we anonymize and can analyze, but then we also have the visit information so we can see how often people are coming. You know, on average, people visit the food bank 3 times in a year, which is surprising to people. You know, those 56,000 people, they probably came for a short time or just when they needed it. And it's interesting to be able to look at those trends.
I find that I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's actually very shocking and surprising to me. I thought it would have been more regular use.
It just goes to show people are already only using it when they really need it, for the most part. You know what I mean?
Yes.
People are on average like, oh, these were the tough months, or,
Yes.
maybe you're a seasonal worker or whatever it is.
Which could really change the perspective.
Yes.
Because, again, just like what you said, Sue, like, I always thought that people would be visiting them more frequently and not just like one-offs or, so just like it changes your perspective when you think about food banks.
Well, I mean, of the over 56,000 people last year, over 20,000 of them, it was their very first time using a food bank, new entry into the system.
Interesting.
And so that's a big,
shocking too.
Yeah.
That it went up 20,000.
yeah.
Wow.
And so you think of, people are navigating the system for the first time, they're trying to figure it out, maybe they're finding out maybe getting 7 days of food once a month isn't worth it for them, for the transportation to get there, for the time with the kids and all that kind of stuff. Or maybe it was just a real crunch. Something happened, they had to fix a car, they had to take a trip home to visit family, and they couldn't make it.
I just honestly think that people are good at heart and they just have pride and they don't want to use resources unless they definitely are in dire straits.
It's
It's a
amazing.
stigma too,
Yes.
right?
What's
Like
amazing,
all those things. Yes.
how often clients will say like, oh, I'll just take one, I want to leave enough for everybody else. I'm like, no, you have 4 people in your family, you could take 2. But people are conscious of the fact that there's other people who have needs. I think it's a small group of humans who try to scam and kind of screw each other over.
Right.
Like you said, for the most part, people are trying to do well by themselves and recognize other people are too.
So just to put it in perspective, a family of 4. When you mentioned a lot of people come in for a 7 days supply. Like dollar value, what does that look like for a family of 4?
Yeah. So, I mean, a family of 4 getting food for 7 days, I mean, like when I'm a once a week grocery shopper, I know what it looks like for 2 people, for my husband and I, it's just the 2 of us. And we would do it's the same kind of cart full of food like people would get. So now it may not be exactly what you wanted. We try to meet Canada's food guide, food groups as best we can. But sometimes the protein's going to be peanut butter, tuna, and lentils, and it's probably not going to be steak. And, on the vegetable side, it's probably going to be carrots, onions, apples, oranges, like the stuff we have in bulk that's cheap. And so we're trying to cover the food groups. We're trying to cover, we have a great bread relationships. We always have loaves of bread for people. People always get milk. We have eggs. We have dairy, but it's not often a lot. And so, a family would get everything they need. Plus, we often have Ziploc bags, period products, toilet paper, shampoo.
Toiletries, yes.
Any of the stuff you buy at the grocery store, we would have to supply for folks. And so it offsets their costs. They can put that money towards other stuff that they have to pay for.
Paying their bills, their heat.
And most of our food banks are shopping model. So people actually go around. And so it would say, like, pick 4
I've been in the
from
one
this.
The company.
Yeah, so it'd say
exactly.
pick 4 from the shelf, pick 4 from here. Yeah.
Moving forward, we're talking about increased need. What innovative ideas have you guys thought of, or what's out there that's innovative to try to reduce, this need for food?
I mean, this is part of the challenge, is that we don't have control really over the levers that actually reduce poverty and the need for food. We can come up with innovative ways of getting food to people, innovative ways of connecting the right foods with the right people. So our home delivery program is one of those things that meets a need for a specific group. This program for the Black serving agencies to make sure the foods are appropriate. These are the kind of things we're focused on.
Now, what about advocacy?
Yeah.
On that, what are you doing for advocacy? Because obviously innovation or whatever, but where do you advocate? Or is that where you're looking for support out in the community for more advocacy?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think if we're going to reduce food bank use, it has to be an election issue. So 2025 looks like it's going to be a busy year for elections.
Yes,
And
whether we want it or not.
one of the things we've been talking about is how can we engage the Mississauga community? How can we give them the tools and the resources so that when someone comes knocking on their door, they can say, what are you going to do about the fact that food bank use rose higher in my city than anywhere else in the province? Okay. And we want to give people at least the questions to ask the candidates who are coming to their door.
Okay.
We have to engage. We need our elected officials. We need the parties, the candidates to know that to win, you got to address food insecurity.
Well, I think the thing is, like my belief is they have to push it up. It can't be here. It's got to be pushed up because I truly believe that it's got to come from all levels of government. It just can't come from the municipal side. It's got to come from provincially.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to be in the same boat.
Yeah.
I
We have
don't see
a
how-
million people a month using a food bank in Ontario. 2 million across Canada.
And they're funded specifically by their specific municipality.
Most of them aren't.
Most of them.
Many don't even get any government funding. Like the
Right.
food bank in Toronto, Daily Bread gets nothing from the city.
Really?
We're all funded on donation money. And so some provinces have invested, but not Ontario. They haven't put a dime into food security for their
So
residents.
that's a
you said-
huge provincial issue then, with
Yeah,
a
but-
provincial election likely going to be happening.
Well, when you mentioned that, it brought me back to something that you had mentioned before that I personally never thought of. And that was the relationship between food scarcity and housing, right? So, that's something that obviously needs to be addressed.
It's the number one
Like-
thing people tell us when they come to the food bank for the first time is my housing is so expensive, I have no money left over for food.
Yeah.
And so,
And that is tragic
Yes.
as well. And that's not just, as you were saying, it's single people that
Yeah.
are telling you that, but it's younger couples.
absolutely.
Coming in, younger couples
Families
with
with kids,
families.
yes.
And then the seniors who can't afford to stay in their homes that they've been in for 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more often seniors that are renting that we see more often. That's where the issues are. Because if you have a home, it kind of indicates you probably have some other financial resources. But if you're past 65 and you're renting a place and your income has not gone up with the
Right.
cost of those rents, you're going to be in big trouble.
And your Social Security does not go
No.
up. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's
You know?
very challenging. Like, Mississauga's average rent is like over $2,000. But the
It's come
average
down recently.
income of a food bank user is less than $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's just rent. And then what are you going to do?
And
You
where
can't eat your rent.
And where does a senior get that money if they have no resources and they're just living on their
And there's no-
monthly check from the government?
And there's no hope for subsidized housing or rent geared to income or any of those because we're not building it in Peel because it's too expensive now.
Yeah.
It's scary days ahead. I think the food bank is trying to ensure we're resilient to fare the storms ahead, to continue to be here for the people who need us.
But you can't do it without help.
But we can't do it without help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That's-
And I firmly believe that all levels of government have to help with the housing issue because we're not getting the type of housing we need.
No,
I
we're
don't
getting
care.
lots of houses. We're
Yeah,
not getting-
developers aren't
we're
in
not
the
getting affordable
business
housing.
of
Yeah.
building rental
We need rental housing.
housing, and they need to.
Yeah,
They
let's
need
be
to
clear,
step up.
not condos that
Yes.
individual people
People
buy
buy.
and rent out to pay their mortgage. I'm
Starting
talking about,
at $8.99.
yeah, I'm talking
That's
about
not-
buildings built with rental apartments in them that will be rented by the company that built the building, like rentals.
Exactly, and also geared for low income.
Yep.
We need to, that has to be
Most of the
there.
rental stock in Mississauga was built in the 70s and 80s. We just stopped building rental housing.
Because the federal government
Got out of that business.
got out of that
Yeah.
business.
And now this is 30 years later, the result of we pulled back on what the welfare and disability rates were and then stopped them increasing with inflation. And then we stopped building affordable housing. And if you do that for 30 years, you'll have a food bank crisis.
That's exactly, and that's where we are.
So do you think that, like the old Ontario housing, is that something that you could see working in today's environment?
That's what Toronto's getting back into as a city. They're building more Toronto community housing. We need Peel housing to be building more buildings. We need apartments that cost $1,500 a month for someone who makes $4,500 a month. People need to find apartments that cost 30% of their income. And someone's got to give.
And the federal government has to step up
Yep.
and come back into play.
Yeah, we need to change the rules about taxation on homes. We need to pull all the levers we have available to connect affordable homes that people can actually live in.
So lastly, let's talk about transportation and transportation barriers.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that you find and your clients are finding?
Well, Mississauga is a very car-based city. We didn't build it with transit in mind. We built it with cars in mind. So now we're trying to slap transit on top of it, and
Which is a challenge.
it's very tough. And so one of the challenges for people is just the cost to get to and from the food bank. It's $3 something on the bus now, and just that alone. And then you've got your bags of groceries, 7 days worth of groceries, and so people often leave food behind because they can't carry it with them on the bus. And that's a sad state of affairs. So there is a discount transit program here in Mississauga. Some of our agencies buy tickets to help offset that cost for people, but not all of them can. And so, I mean, my ideal future, unlimited free transportation, universal for everybody. It's the only way people are going to use it.
But they're definitely not going to use it right now in the way it's.
You can't get where you need to go.
You can't get where you need to go, and if you can get to where you want to go,
it takes 4 times longer.
Oh, man.
So, like, I live in Meadowvale.
Right.
Where, like, I live at 10th Line and Britannia, and the food bank is here at Eglinton and Eastgate.
Right.
Yeah.
For me to get here on my way would take 2.5 hours,
One
or it
way.
takes me 25 minutes.
Is that one way?
Yeah, one way.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
I just,
and then
and I'd have
add,
to walk a kilometer.
yeah,
Like, I'm
and
just not
then
doing
add
it.
in shopping bags to try
Yes.
to get all the way on and off the buses.
And then
and
imagine you have kids, but you
Yeah.
can't afford a babysitter, so you got to bring them with you.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing, it just doesn't
Yeah.
it's
work
a
for them.
nightmare. Has there been any thought of like working with, you know,
Like
some
Uber
of
or
these?
something
That's
like
what I
that?
was just
Yeah.
going to say, the Ubers and the Lyfts to maybe get a program in place for, or again, are they
This
in
is-
the business to make money and they're not interested?
Yeah, this has been why we partner with agencies and neighborhood food banks to, like, we could have just built one big mega food bank and said, come one, come all. But we said it's better to partner with agencies in neighborhoods so they're closer for people. So that's the first step. We haven't found a partner who would be willing to donate their transportation
No.
services
Right,
yet.
right.
Yeah.
You could talk all day.
Oh, I could. My poor husband, he knows I could talk about the food
Right.
bank for a long time.
No, this-
Apparently, I do in my sleep even now. Recently, we were on holidays. He's like, you gave a whole speech last night about why you should support the food bank and it's important for our community. He's like, I didn't want to wake you up because you were really going for it.
Yeah, no, and
You know what? Next time you'll have to record you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think this discussion is probably going to open up a lot of people's minds about what is actually happening within our city and how food banks operate. And I guess the importance of everybody just to get involved and to help get the word out.
And the need, and the dire need.
Yeah.
And these are your neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, they're kids, families that are in your kids' class at school. They're people who live in your condo building. They're folks renting the basement apartment down the street. There are people living in the house that they own
Right.
that are struggling.
And,
so,
and I mean, you never know because sometime down the road,
yep.
it might be you, it
God
might be
forbid.
me, it might be,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
might be any one of us.
Times are tough
Yeah.
and emergencies
Yeah.
happen and disasters happen.
Yeah.
And but this is the time to really think compassionately about the people who live around us and say, what would I want for myself and my family? And why wouldn't I want that for my neighbor who just is trying to live and have the best life for their family and their kids as anybody else's?
And I think it really honed, you know, down for me just the fact that it's not just the food bank. You got to step outside of the food bank and fix that picture of where do people live? How do they live affordably? And again, that goes back to the government. And I think particularly
All
the
levels of
federal,
government.
all levels,
Yes.
and particularly federal has to get back in this business because your need is just going to continue to go up because I see more and more people are leaving Mississauga.
And we don't address the root cause. We're a Band-Aid. A proud Band-Aid, an
Yeah.
effective Band-Aid, a needed Band-Aid, but still a Band-Aid. And so until we sew together that wound of their no social support, lack of housing, food banks are going to have to continue slapping that Band-Aid on and hope it's enough to hold people together.
Okay, great. This has been fantastic. There'll be information, of course, that we'll put on the bottom of
Great.
Of the video for people who want to contact the Mississauga Food Bank and how they get involved, and
Absolutely.
how they can
Yeah,
donate
happy
and
to.
so on. But again, like we could talk about.
Yeah,
some
this is
different things,
awesome.
and I'm sure
Yeah.
we've maybe missed out a couple things. But either way, thank you so much.
Oh, no, you're very
Megan,
welcome.
for
Thank you.
We appreciate your time.
No, not at all. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that you're looking at a number of kind of community issues, and I'll check in to hear
Right.
what you're talking about with the other things too, and it's exciting.
So thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
on MIRANET Talks.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Take care.
We could talk all day.
Oh, I could. My poor husband, he knows I could talk about the food
Right.
bank for a long time.
No, this-
Apparently, I do in my sleep even now. Recently, we were on holidays. He's like, you gave a whole speech last night about why you should support the food bank and it's important for our community. He's like, I didn't want to wake you up because you were really going for it.
Yeah. No, and
You know what? Next time you'll have to record you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think this discussion is probably going to open up a lot of people's minds about what is actually happening within our city and how food banks operate. And I guess the importance of everybody just to get involved and to help get the word out.
And the need, and the dire need.
Yeah.
And these are your neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, they're kids, families that are in your kids' class at school.
Mhm.
They're people who live in your condo building. They're folks renting the basement apartment down the street. There are people living in the house that they own
Right.
that are struggling.
And
so,
I mean, you never know, because sometime down the road,
yep.
it might be you, it
God
might be
forbid.
me, it might be,
Yeah,
it might be
absolutely.
any one of us.
Times are tough
Yeah.
and emergencies
Yeah.
happen and disasters happen.
Yeah.
And but this is the time to really think compassionately about the people who live around us and say, what would I want for myself and my family? And why wouldn't I want that for my neighbor who just is trying to live and have the best life for their family and their kids as anybody else's?
And I think it really honed, down for me, just the fact that it's not just the food bank. You got to step outside of the food bank and fix that picture of where do people live? How do they live affordably? And again, that goes back to the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly
All
the
levels of
federal,
government.
all levels,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
particularly federal has to get back in this business because your need is just going to continue to go up because I see more and more people are leaving Mississauga.
And we don't address the root cause. We're a Band-Aid. A proud Band-Aid, an
Yeah.
effective Band-Aid, a needed Band-Aid, but still a Band-Aid. And so until we sew together that wound of their no social support, lack of housing, food banks are going to have to continue slapping that Band-Aid on and hope it's enough to hold people together.
Okay, great. This has been fantastic. There'll be information, of course, that we'll put on the bottom of
Great.
Of the video for people who want to contact the Mississauga Food Bank and how they get involved, and
Absolutely.
how they can
Yeah,
donate
happy
and
to.
so on. But again, like we could talk about.
Yeah,
some
this is
different things,
awesome.
and I'm sure
Yeah.
we've maybe missed out a couple things. But either way, thank you so much.
Oh, no, you're very
Meaghan,
welcome.
for
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
No, not at all. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that you're looking at a number of kind of community issues, and I'll check in to hear
Right.
what you're talking about with the other things too. And it's exciting.
So thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
on MIRANET Talks.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Take care.